Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz drummer, bandleader, composer, and educator Ted Moore. We interviewed him in January 2021 about his latest 2020 CD, The Natural Order of Things, COVID-19, and his life as a busy musician in Berkley, California. Since graduating from the famed Eastman School of Music, he has pursued a career which has taken him to many parts of the world with a lot of different great artists. He opens up about this and so much more. Enjoy.
Thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So I think the name of your latest album is probably ironic with the world that's going on right now.
That's a good point. No one's mentioned that yet.
Man alive. I saw that and I was like, wait, hold on. Now in 2019, that would make more sense. But right now, I don't know if we know the order of anything.
That's absolutely true. And I'll tell you, it makes it all the more important to keep music in our lives.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, with that in mind, talk to me a little bit about having an album out during a pandemic. Is this special? What are your thoughts on that?
It's odd. It's unusual, that's for sure. On one hand, we're not able to go out and promote it and do the shows that we would normally do to follow up and support it. But at the other time, I mean, it gets us out to a lot of online. We work on our social media skills a little bit more and take advantage of what's out there for all of us artists while we're home. So, it's a two-edged sword, that's for sure.
It's a great album. What do you want the audience to get from this experience?
I think what I'm trying to do, as I said in the liner notes there, is to give something that represents various parts of my experience from different places in the world. There's music from Brazil and Spain and even classical music. And when I say music from Brazil and Spain, I mean influences on me from various parts of the world where I've lived and worked. And after living in Rio for 2 years, I mean, that works its way to almost everything that I write in one way or another. That was a pretty amazing experience. So there's various influences from all over the world, and they all come together in one place, in one artist. And I'm fortunate to have two bandmates that bring this music alive far beyond my wildest expectations.
So let's talk about the beginnings of your journey in music. Talk to me about where you were born and raised and your family and kind of how music and even more specifically jazz became such a big part of your existence.
So I grew up outside of Philadelphia. I'm a Philly boy. Spent a lot of time on the East Coast, went to school in Rochester, New York, Eastman School of Music, moved to New York after that and lived there for a long time before moving out to the West Coast. And I mean, I started a lot of drummers in my family. My dad was a drummer before I was born. He wasn't playing, when I arrived. But he was a player, and he got me started in listening to big band music. That's where it started. He used to listen to big band music constantly from the 30s and 40s, and so I grew up on that and learning the arrangements and so forth. We would sing arrangements together before I went to bed at night, so that was a pretty good start to getting a drummer's handle on music. And it started there and playing all through high school and so forth. And like I said, went to Eastman and met Phil. We played that's Phil Markowitz, piano player in the trio. We played together for many years in school and after school, moved to New York together. And so we have a long history of playing together, and sometimes it's my band, sometimes it's his band. We've had a long history, and it was really great to have that combination of somebody from the past and with such a long time friendship, and then Kai Eckhart, who's a friend that I've met out here since moving to California. So it was a nice combination of things, and I just had the feeling these guys were going to play great together, and they sure did.
Well, you've been around a lot of big names over your career, like Jack Wilkins and Herbie Mann and Billy Eckstine, Joey DiFrancesco. What have you learned from these veterans, these legends that have helped you teaching young players? What have they given you?
Well, I think, when you talk about the older guys in the old school, I'll tell you a quick funny story. Playing with Joe Williams, one of the all-time greats. And this was when I was still a student in college. In fact, it's with our college trio with Phil. He came to Rochester to do a weekend, and they hired us to play with him. And so we were honored and flattered, to say the least. And he brought in the Basie book for the rehearsal. And this Basie book is about 8 inches thick with all these charts. And we just looked at this and went, oh, my God, are you kidding me? So so he calls the first tune, and he said, just play the last 4 bars. I said, okay. So we played the last 4 bars. And the whole rehearsal was him just calling the last 4 bars of all the tunes that he wanted to play that night. And he said, look, the rest will take care of itself. As long as we end together, we'll be fine. Let's just get the endings. The rest will work itself out. So, I mean, this is street knowledge, you know, and of course he's been doing this for a long time. He didn't feel like rehearsing all these charts that he's been singing for years with a bunch of young college guys. So I totally get that. So we had to be on it. We had to be sharp. We had to read the charts. We had, you know, play, and support him at the same time as reading. So, you know, I think what comes from working with these guys is that sense of doing your homework and being prepared, so that when you have this opportunity and it comes to you, you're ready for it. I think that's the main thing that I've learned from those guys.
Well, speaking about being around those guys, we're talking about the live environment and travel and all of that. What do you miss the most during this, you know, going on 10 months or more of just silence in the jazz world? What are you missing the most out of that process?
Yeah, I think for sure the answer for most of us performers would be interaction. You know, we don't have the same. I mean, let's face it, social media is interesting, but it just ain't the same thing, you know? It's close but no cigar. So, I mean, I think it's the interaction with other people, musically, of course, but personally as well. When I get involved in these projects, it's always with good friends, and it's a shame when we don't have a chance to. We stay in touch with each other, of course, you know, throughout this whole situation, and I hope we're rounding the corner and getting a little bit closer to back to normal. But I think, boy, I can't imagine the booking world is going to go crazy when this is over. Everybody's going to be ready to go and ready to play again, and I think as much as a lot of the clubs are suffering, and it's just sad to see places closing and so forth, I think there's going to be a whole new life coming when this is over, and people are going to be so anxious to both get out and play and others to get out and listen. So I think there's going to be a huge wave of live shows once we're done with this.
What was the first live jazz show you saw that really inspired you, made you think, man, this is something that I could do with my life?
One of the first live jazz, there was a club in Philly that used to let people, it was called the Showboat, and there was a Sunday afternoon matinee when they would let underage kids up in the balcony, and I remember sitting up in the balcony, which was almost on top of the stage, and listening to Gary Burton and his band. And I mean, it was a real close-up experience, and it was fantastic. And then I remember a few years later seeing Miles Electric Group in concert, and I mean, let's be honest, that my ears were not quite there yet, you know, figuring out what all that was about as a young player. But it really inspired me a lot to want to know more. And to just figure out what this interaction seemed really deep, but I didn't really fully understand or grasp how they were doing it and what they were doing to make all that work. So it was just like a huge mysterious puzzle that went together somehow that I didn't get yet. And that made me really want to dig deeper and learn about this music and figure out what they were doing. That was a great experience, even though I couldn't really follow all of it.
What do you like the best about being an educator? What is it that drives you to give to the next generation?
I think it's when that light bulb goes on and you see in the students that they grasp some new concept that they've been working on and figured out how to apply it. In academic jazz, there's you have to go over basic rules and foundational principles and teach the roots, but you also have to impress upon them that that's not it. You need to know that all of that stuff to express yourself, but that's not it. The real craft is in weaving your own story and playing the solo in a tune the way nobody else would play it, and then nobody else could play it. And when students get to a level where they're really at that stage when they can start to say something that's beyond the theory and self-expression, and they get to put out something that is very personal to them, that's I think the most rewarding thing for me to see how the students make progress and get to that level.
I've periodically asked, musicians and educators, how healthy is jazz? And 2020 pretty much sealed the deal for me. I don't have to ask that again because the amount of gigs that everybody's had to cancel. If you think right now as we head into kind of, like you said, rounding a corner, how healthy do you think this craft is? I think there's been questions, but just the amount of gigs and revenue that was lost in the jazz community is staggering. What do you think about the health and vitality of the jazz world is?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, there's the question of how healthy is it in light of the pandemic, and then there's the ongoing question of how healthy is it that's been going on since the 40s and 50s. And and it's not just the jazz world, of course. Classical world is affected. Symphonies are trying to figure out how to survive. Everybody's trying to figure out how to survive. So I think it speaks to the resourcefulness of the jazz world that things continue in whatever fashion people are able to do. Play together on Zoom, put together these amazing videos. I think people are developing individual skills that they would not have put the time in on previously. And they may or may not enjoy all of those, but it's part of what they've done to make things work. And this music, because it's so fresh and it's so essential and it's so in the moment, is really going to survive, much worse than this. I mean, it's going to come back with a vengeance, once this is done. And I think, if anything, it's made us realize, you don't know what you've got till it's lost, So I think there's going to be a renewed appreciation for live music, and this is just we're just on hold. This is just a little break. Everybody gets to stay home with their families, and I've said many times, the dogs are the big winners of this whole thing, man. We're home all day long. They're going to freak out when everybody starts leaving again, because, mine can't believe all the attention they're getting. So I think it's going to come back super strong and be appreciated on a level that we've never seen before, because we didn't have it for a while.
I have an idea that I've watched to Steven Spielberg in the vein of that Netflix show, Stranger Things, and all of the kids that were conceived around March and April, and everybody was home. And they always say that, babies hear music and voices and that kind of sound of familiarity and family. It always makes them smarter. So hopefully what can happen in 20 years from now from all these kids that are born is maybe they've gotten some level of extra special intelligence, and they come up with a vaccine or some kind of remedy to any future pandemic.
That's a great theory.
And we can call them the COVID kids.
Absolutely. Well, that's a great theory, and it's the same as after the war was over and people came home and families and the middle class grew up. And it brings on something even better. That's a very interesting theory you have there that I haven't heard before, and again, that's in that nature of enhanced appreciation for an art form that we temporarily had to put to the side. So I think there's a lot to what you're saying.
So everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your students, fans, but you're the one living your life. Who do you think you are?
That's a good one. That's not in my notes. So, as a true improviser, I'll have to wing it on this one. I think I am, as all human beings are, a collection of experiences. And since everyone's experiences are unique, we all bring something different. And in the case of jazz, we're bringing some unique artistry, hopefully in a way that nobody else could possibly imagine to do it. And that doesn't mean it's the best. It just means it's unique and very personal. And I think I'm somebody that wishes strongly to connect with people, and that's even beyond music. So it's wonderful to have this vehicle of music to be able to do that. But it's bigger than that. You know, this desire to connect with people is bigger than music. Goes beyond music. And so I think that's a big part of who I am, and full of gratitude for having a vehicle such as music to be able to express that, because it's I started thinking about music and listening to music and early attempts at playing drums at 5 years old, and started at 7. And, at 69, I'm still going strong and thinking about what's next. And you realize that this is never ending. The study of music is never ending. As soon as the beauty is that this is a never ending journey, and you just grow and grow and grow and offer things to people constantly. And it's just wonderful.
Right on. Ted, thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz today. I saved the hardest one for last. Good luck with
I'm going to think of a really good answer and call you back in the back.
That's fine. That's fine. We do rendezvous around here all the time on Neon Jazz, so that's good.
Sounds great. Well, listen, Joe, thank you for everything you're doing. It's so important day to day, and even more so now. So thank you so much for your contributions in keeping this music alive.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Berkeley, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Ted for his time, cool, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.